although the music industry may seem crazy and hard and competitive, it's definitely my firm belief that there's a spot for everyone who wants to be a part of it.
All right, we're here with Matt. What's going on, brother?
Awesome, man. No, yeah, not a lot. Just chilling out. It's a nice nighttime. It's freaking cold down here in Melbourne. I don't know what it's like up there, but it's freezing down here.
Yeah, it's pretty miserable. There's lightning, there's rain.
Oh Jesus! Oh, it's worse
We're,
up there than it is down here. My God.
we're definitely approaching winter. That's for sure. That's
Yes.
for sure.
Yes, absolutely.
Cool, bro. Well, yeah, we kind of wanted to know a little bit about you.
Mm.
You got your fingers in quite a lot of pies, and a lot of it is
Yes.
production side.
Mm-hmm.
So you're going to be one of the first producers that we're holding on this kind of podcast video thing that we're
Yes.
doing here.
Sick.
And
Awesome.
so,
Great.
yeah, can you tell us a little bit about how you got started and maybe what piqued your interest in the whole kind of music industry?
Yeah, for sure. Well, I mean, I grew up playing keyboard, playing piano, like from a really, really young age, and then kind of going through my teenage years, I got really into like metal music, heavy metal music, and it was like,
Mm,
oh man, I really enjoyed that, and I always wanted to, when I was kind of in that like 14, 15, maybe like more about 14 age, I was like, oh, I really want to like start playing music in a band, and I was trying to figure out, how I could go about that, being a keyboardist and listening to the majority of the music that I listened to was like metal music, which there
mm,
weren't a lot of like keyboards in metal music, right? But I found out, I started like listening through some bands and stuff and started hearing these cool sounds like, oh, what, seeing some keyboardists in bands. I was like, oh, I figured out that they were playing synthesizers and stuff. So I was like, oh,
mm,
what's a synthesizer? And I kind of started to get my head around that. And then I got a synth. I got like it was like a microKORG or something like that, a microKORG
mm.
XL.
Do you
And I
remember? Do you
started,
remember when you saw your first synth? Like, was that a big moment for you, or was it just
yeah,
like,
it was huge. I actually, yeah, I really remember it actually. It was, so it's something that I'd wanted for ages. I was like saving up for it and I was like, oh, I can keep, let's keep going with it. And then actually it was a birthday. And my dad came down and he did this like, because he knew I'd been saving up for it. And then he came down and he kind of gave me this card. And, and it said in the card, it's like, it was something along the lines of like, um, like there's a present for you, but you have to like pay a certain amount of money for it or something.
mm,
Um, so I was like, oh
young
yeah,
Padawan? Yeah,
yeah, exactly.
mad life lessons.
And
Love it.
yeah, and then he took me out to his car, um, and like popped open the boot, and I was just like sitting there with like the synth in the box, and I was like, oh my god, this is amazing. It's yeah, so that was super cool. Um, yeah, that was an awesome experience, a great memory. Um, and it kind of grew from there, and then I was playing around with synths and some hardware stuff, and then I discovered like making music on computers using like Ableton and some other software and stuff, and I
Mhm.
just kind of grew my interest from there really, and started making sounds and tracks using Ableton without really any kind of knowledge of electronic music, to be perfectly honest.
Mm.
My only exposure to electronic music was like the pop music that I'd heard on the radio and stuff like that. Um, and some of the sounds that I'd heard in metal. But I do remember one of the first kind of electronic tracks that really hooked me was Porter Robinson's Language.
Mhm.
Um, and that, like, I remember hearing that on the radio one time. I was like, oh, what is this? Like, this is awesome. This is wild. And then that kind of really influenced a lot of my production style in the early days, and continues to actually until this day.
And
Uh,
what was it like to kind of jump into Ableton first thing? Because it has to be one of the
yeah,
most confronting. I started on Fruity Loops, which is a
yeah,
little bit, it's a little bit, I don't know. Whenever I open Ableton, even to this day, it's a little bit confronting on how
yeah, for
open
sure.
it kind of is, I guess, in a
Yeah,
way.
yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, funnily enough, so how it worked, because I have my synth, and then I had this mate in high school, and was using Ableton actually, and we kind of started doing this little bit of like a duo thing together where we did some like live performances. We covered like some Daft Punk songs and stuff like that.
Hmm.
And so he was using Ableton. I had no idea what was going on with Ableton or whatever. He just had like I think it was one of the old school APC 40s or whatever.
Hmm.
Um, and so I'd just play like the live synth lines, and he'd be triggering stuff. I was like, oh, that's awesome. Like I want to be able to do that. And I kind of looked into it, and I downloaded, I did actually, play around with FL Studio a little bit.
Hmm.
But I was like, nah, this is different. This isn't what I want. So then I bought myself a launch pad.
Mm.
And I kind of, the way I learnt Ableton was by basically, playing around with the launchpad and using like Ableton's like session view to just like trigger loops and stuff. And then it kind of just progressed from there. And I kind of really got into the, more like actually creating side of thing as opposed to just kind of using like pre-made loops and triggering them and stuff like that.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, it was certainly a different DAW to get into. I'm now pretty well acquainted with like a lot of different DAWs because I have to teach them.
Hmm.
But yeah, looking, like teaching in Ableton and teaching in different DAWs, I really realize how different Ableton is from all of the other DAWs out there.
Mm.
Um, and I guess in a sense, I'm kind of grateful that I learned on it because like I find it really useful and great. But um, yeah, it's certainly different to other
Mm.
DAWs, that's for sure.
Yeah, like quite a few beginner DJs sometimes make the mistake because they
Mm.
believe that Ableton is a DJ kind of software, which it is. Don't
It
get me
can
wrong,
be,
it
yeah.
can be and it is. Uh, but if that's your first kind of foray into the
Mm.
DJ kind of industry, virtual DJ or u.dj, which is like an online web-based DJ thing where you
Yeah,
kind of
cool.
mix two songs. That is a much like easier place to learn how to kind of mix music rather than
Yeah,
having
right.
just like that massive open format. Just whatever you want to do. Here's like an endless possibility. Um,
Mm.
but that's awesome. And how did that tie into the metal stuff? Did that kind of ever get actualized? The whole, or was the metal just like your
No,
gateway?
yeah, the metal was just the gateway. I still love listening to metal, and I kind of listened to metal throughout the years. I started trying to play guitar and everything. It just wasn't quite for me. I can get my way around guitar a little bit
Hmm.
now, but no, metal was just more of like the kind of the gateway drug into dance music
Hmm.
in a weird way. um, and now, so like it got me into. Now I listen to like a lot of and make like a lot of dubstep and stuff like that, and in a
Hmm.
way like. Especially nowadays, dubstep is very much like the metal of the electronic world,
Yeah,
in a
absolutely.
sense.
Like it's interesting how trap and dubstep and stuff has evolved, and
Mm,
it to me a lot of it is about kind of the emotion that it brings, and I feel like it's a very raw, very you know like get your screw face on when you're
yeah,
dancing to dubstep, you got your like your really rough face,
yeah,
and
exactly.
metal's kind of similar, right? Like metal's maybe a little bit more kind of moving your head a bit, but
Yeah,
anyway,
totally.
I don't know too much about metal. That's the
Yeah.
thing, but I
That's it's funny, like, because I only started recently kind of going to like dubstep shows and stuff like that,
mm,
before lockdown and when we actually could go to shows. But the similarities, between dubstep shows now in terms of the crowd and the atmosphere and like the metal shows that I used to go to as a teenager, it's like really, quite similar, quite in a strange way. So yeah,
mm.
really cool.
Crazy. So, all right. So you've gone to your dad's boot. You found like your pride and joy,
Yeah.
the synthesizer. Then you've hooked up with one of your friends who kind of taught you the ropes of Ableton. And what
Mm.
do you think was like your first moment where you realized like, yeah, this is something I'm gonna do. Like when did it get serious? You think?
Mm.
Or is that a
I
tough one?
was It's totally tough. So, but it's good to kind of think about it
Mm,
because I was so going through high school. I mean, one of the things that really drew me to like using Ableton and creating music was the fact that I could do it by myself and I didn't need the band kind of scenario.
mm,
And then that just kind of grew, and I found myself. Uh, just really quickly became a hobby and something that I was just really interested in learning because I found it really creatively fulfilling.
Mm.
In high school, I was super into, I was playing music, I was playing piano. I didn't really see myself playing or becoming like a concert pianist or a jazz pianist or whatever in the
Mm.
future. And but the piano really tied into the production stuff quite well. Um, and I was quite into like drama and acting and stuff like that. So I
Mhm.
had these like two creative paths. Um, and I was also quite, good at maths, and I had a lot of people kind of pulling me down this like maths route. It's like, no, I want to be like a creative. That's what I want to do. Um, and then I just kind of stuck with my guns, and luckily I had really supportive like family and friends, and a really supportive like high school environment and everything.
Mhm.
So straight out of high school, I went in to study composition and music production at the Australian Institute of Music.
Mm.
I remember like having my interview there or whatever, um, and just immediately kind of getting offered a spot, and I was like, clearly this is like what I'm supposed to do, you know. And before that, I was kind of just making tracks in my bedroom. I had some like setups and stuff like that. Well, not
Mm.
in my bedroom, in my like lounge room even. I had like a dining table set up, and it's like kind of in my lounge room with some speakers and stuff on it. It was a really kind of it's pretty shonky setup, but
Your studio, the studs.
yeah, yeah, exactly,
Yeah, nice.
exactly.
Oh, I love it. I love it. And yeah, I also think that math part's interesting. Maybe we can talk about that
Mm,
another time because I feel like there's very basic maths in production, but I think if you
yeah.
can kind of master some complicated maths, I'm sure that actually helps. Um,
Oh, 100%. And it's certainly helped with me like getting into more of the audio engineering side of things as well, understanding the technical approach to music production. Like, yeah, it's
yeah, because
my mind kind of works in that way. So
yeah, producers, used to wear lab coats and stuff. They were raw engineers, but the barrier
yeah,
to entry is much lower, which is awesome, which is absolutely awesome.
absolutely.
All right, another tough question.
Yeah.
When do you think you were maybe closest to quitting, or or did you?
Hmm.
I guess the intention is, a big part of persistence, especially in art, is about being able to kind of shrug it off, or like as a
Yeah. No.
DJ, especially, when we're up on stage and you mess up,
Mm,
a lot of the time, if you act like you didn't mess up, no one notices.
yeah.
But if you do mess
100%.
up, people feel that energy, and then yeah, they catch on.
Totally. Yeah, I guess like being, coming from a bit of a drama acting background as well, I was quite used to that kind of sense of it. It's like if you mess up on stage, it's like as long as you kind of just um just don't pay any attention to that mess up,
Hmm.
then no one's going to know, right? And I kind of took that same mentality with like creating as well. But I think where one of the moments where I probably, felt not necessarily like giving up, but like I was really at a bit of a loss for kind of identity and exactly what I was doing and why I was doing it was probably more towards the end of my undergraduate degree, um,
Hmm.
where I'd been going through my undergrad degree, and a lot of the music that I was making as a part of that was really. Uh, quite experimental, a little bit, a little bit out there, doing a lot of weird, like kind of composition concepts and techniques
Hmm.
and sound design stuff, um, as you kind of do when you go through like an academic institution. And then, aside from that, then I was doing some, my own music, I say, like outside of academia.
Hmm.
And I kind of really felt this like split, or I suppose like, yeah, lack of identity. And it's like, what is it that I really want to do? What am I trying to achieve? I was kind of just making tunes for myself and just kind of uploading them to SoundCloud or whatever, or doing some random stuff with it.
Hmm.
And then yeah, doing the stuff as part of uni. And then when I finished uni, I was like, I had a lot of tunes under my belt because I'd done this whole other thing. I did like a weekly beats where I wrote a track a whole year, a track a week for the whole year. Um,
Yeah, wow.
whilst also doing my final year of my undergrad. So I was kind of burnt out. um, but
But
yeah, so
you're shipping
yeah,
music. That's
yeah,
yeah.
exactly. So it was great, but yeah, I felt like very much like a lack of personal identity, and in fact, that like kind of lack of identity carried on for a fair while, at least with my own solo stuff, and really only in the last kind of year and a half to maybe 2 years has that sense of identity really solidified, and I've actually picked up a lot more uh, love for music production, and
Mm,
like the process of creating, because the stuff that I'm making now, uh, and have been for a little while, is the stuff that really resonates with me. And I found for a while that the stuff that I was making wasn't necessarily something that resonated with me, and more so just stuff that I was making as a way of getting my chops up, um,
mm,
which, don't get me wrong, there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. But at the time I was doing it, I didn't identify that's what I was doing.
mhm,
And it was more so like, oh, I felt like I had to have my sound, and I felt like I had to be great and know exactly what I was doing, which direction I was going.
mm,
Um, but like in reality, I didn't need to feel that way, and I didn't need to, it was totally okay to just be churning out tunes and experimenting, and then kind of finally, carving a bit of a spot out for myself and figuring out what exactly my sound was and what I wanted to do. So it was a little bit of a rocky road,
mm.
at least, in terms of my solo stuff there. But
So it
yeah.
was. So it sounds like it was kind of like a technical. You were getting your production up to a certain technical level, but
Mm,
you thought that it was that you had to be perfect for every track, or you had to have a certain sound. Whereas what was
mm,
actually happening potentially is, you were just getting good at your trade, and
yeah,
you were kind of implementing everything always, which is
yeah,
kind of the best way to start.
yeah,
But I heard
totally, absolutely.
an interesting quote. I can't remember exactly, but it was, you know, life can only really be observed backwards, but we have to live it forwards
Yeah,
regardless. So,
yeah,
so
100%. That makes
yeah,
a lot of sense.
but you
That's
were
great.
shipping music, and I think that's a big part, which
Mm,
is like, putting music out there is huge, and I'm sure that kind of
yeah.
accelerated the process of getting to that technical level, having that kind of speed bump, and then pushing through. Um,
100%. And, it kind of ties back into that point you were saying before about, like, if you mess up on stage or whatever, you kind of, if you just play it off, a lot that's in another sense, you can kind of tie it back into a lot of the things that one of the things that really holds a lot of producers back when they're trying to be like an artist, right? Is that they don't finish slash release tracks. And that's a really big thing. A lot of people will sit on kind of three quarters complete tracks for ages, or even finished tracks, and just not put it out. And then they're
mm,
just like, oh no, I'm just getting better. I'm just getting better. I'm just getting better. Um, but until you start to put it out, you can hear, or understand people's reactions to your music, and be like, why are they reacting this way? And like, how can I, you know, maybe analyze my own music in a way that I can do some stuff to try and recreate that, or try and understand, um, just how this external feedback can influence my own production. I think it's really, really important thing. So finishing tracks is the best way, and just putting them
mm,
out there as
mm.
well, for sure.
And I like that. And finished tracks is like a bit of an oxymoron, isn't it?
Oh,
Because
a hundred
never
percent,
never really feels
absolutely.
like that, does it?
Yeah, in fact, I've been, telling a lot of people, recently. It's come up quite a lot, that nothing is ever finished. Like, in a creative sense, as a creative, no creative project you do is ever finished. It's just released.
Mm. Mm. So do
It's
you
just
set like
put
a
out
date? How do you go,
there.
I'm going to release this at this time, and then you kind of work towards that date? Or do you have a kind of strategy like that, or not necessarily?
I used to, for sure, absolutely.
Mm.
There was, especially when I was doing like that weekly beats thing that I told you about, and
Mm.
also I run like a community called Beat Collective, where we do a similar thing like that, but it's bi-weekly.
Mm.
Um, and having that sense of a deadline was like, right, okay, like by this date, it has to be done, right? Not necessarily finished, but
Mm.
it's done. It's
Mm.
out by this date,
I
and it's
like
out in
that,
the
man.
universe.
It's done.
And that kind of having worked with that mentality for so long, I kind of now just instinctively get to the point where I know something is done, and
Mm.
I could put off releasing it for ages, but I know that I'm not going to necessarily touch it because it's done. And if I do
Mm.
any more work to it, I'm going to ruin it or something like that. But it takes a long time to be able to get to that point. I've been producing like, now for 9 years, nearly 10 years. And it's just like, yeah, it's really hard to get to that point where you can recognize that something is at the last stage that it's ever going to be
Mm.
at. And if you try and push it any further than that, it's going to be to the detriment of the work.
Yeah. Go for done, not finished. I like that.
Exactly.
I
Exactly.
like
Yeah.
that. I like that a lot. Yeah. And then you mentioned the Beat Collective, and that seems to be growing
Hmm.
quite well. And you've got your kind of solo stuff, the
Yeah.
what is it, Martin, and you've got
Yeah. Martiln. Yeah.
uh, twofold as well. Is that
Yeah. Yeah. I did
yeah?
some stuff
So
with them. Yeah.
how do you balance all that? And maybe tell us a little bit about kind of the three of them and how they kind of intertwine and also maybe separated.
For sure, yeah. So Beat Collective is really great. It's something that I hopped into a few years ago, and just kind of took over the reins a little bit. We did a whole bunch of stuff around Melbourne where we would showcase the live electronic scene, but really it grew out of just this idea of creating a community of music producers and um, creating an environment where people felt comfortable to share their music, get feedback on their music, and also provide kind of a platform for producers to actually create and help them create by giving them resources and deadlines to have things finished by. So we run these like fortnightly production challenges where we send out 2 samples at the start of the fortnight,
Hmm.
and then the members have, community members have the 2 weeks to use those samples in some kind of a track, and they upload that track, whether done or not done, even if it's just an idea,
Hmm.
or finished if they get it to that stage. And then yeah, people just go in and they give feedback on everyone else's tracks, and it's a really really nice community vibe. Um, so that's really cool. And then yeah, so my own solo stuff, Martiln, I've been doing that as under that moniker for yeah, nearly probably like 5 or so years now. And yeah, it's a whole lot of different stuff underneath that moniker, and all of the stuff that I did as part of that weekly beats, which was quite uh, eclectic, quite an eclectic mix of
Mm.
stuff, has all been released under that moniker. And I toyed with the idea of for a while of do I get a different moniker, or like do I just make it my name or whatever. But I kind of decided just to stick with the same that same alias, that same moniker,
Mm.
just because I realized that it was part of my identity, and it wasn't so much so that um, the Martiln project was like a separate project apart from me. It's like I kind of feel like it is me in a sense.
Mm.
Um, and I've got a lot of good feedback good feedback from people that have said like I really enjoy like listening through your entire discography on Spotify or SoundCloud or whatever, and hearing like your progression. Um,
Mm.
and so that really hearing those kind of words was something that also really inspired me to just keep that single moniker going. So now I produce a lot of um, kind of going back to a little bit of my roots, um, doing some like I do a lot of dubstep, melodic dubstep, drum and bass, trap, kind of infuse a lot of different vibes together. Very trance influenced as well.
Mm.
After dubstep, I went through after like metal and kind of dubstep, I suppose I went through a really um, I went through a much faster music phase where I went, started listening to a lot of trance, and then that kind of sped
140
up to
BPM kind of stuff.
yeah,
Yeah.
140 BPM, and then that kind of sped up to like 170, 180 BPM
Mm.
and listen to like happy hardcore and UK
Oh yeah.
hardcore and stuff like
Yeah.
that. So I've started kind of going back to my roots a little bit, and I'm now writing kind of around like 150 to 170, doing some like trance influence, dubstep, stuff like that. Kind of Seven Lions inspired. Um, and then the Twofold Vision project was something that was running for we ran that for about 2 years or so, and we did a bunch of stuff, and I worked really hard. We both worked really hard doing that. As me and a good friend of mine, Alicia, we both worked really hard like on that for a long time. Um, and we released an awesome EP that we were really proud of at the end of 2018 and put on like an awesome show, and it was really, really fun. Um, but yeah, we kind of just decided to take a bit of a break at the end of last year. From that, we just kind of pushed ourselves a bit hard, and I
Mm.
wanted to pursue my own music a little bit more, and she was doing some other stuff in like a coincidentally like a metal band that she's in, like playing bass.
Mm.
Um, and yeah, so we just kind of decided to follow our own musical paths for a little bit. We may get back to the twofold stuff um, eventually, but for the moment, just kind of following our own paths.
All right. So now it's time for a couple tough questions.
All right, shoot, let's do it.
So where do you see yourself in, say, 5 years or so? Whether it's yourself, your music,
Yeah,
what do you see for the future? Maybe it's Martiln, or maybe it's just yourself in general.
yeah. Well, I think in the future, I want what I'm doing as myself, and kind of I was saying before, as Martiln, to be quite um, linked. So I'm doing. I just started a new job at the start of this year, actually teaching music production at the Australian Institute of Music, which is where I did my undergrad.
Ah, full
So
circle. Yeah.
yeah, it's totally come full circle. And teaching is something that I've always been really, really passionate about and really interested in, and I love it. So I don't think that's something that will ever go away. So I really want to continue that teaching, and just so in 5 years, I'd really, whether or not I'm at an institution teaching, or if I'm just doing something privately or whatever, I still think teaching will very much be involved, and I love just seeing people's uh, reactions and like their progressions and everything. And I've taught a few private students and seen them through like a year's worth of tutelage or whatever, and
Mhm.
they just seeing them progress from like not even having any idea what Ableton or music production is, and then they're like churning out bangers week after week. It's like, oh, it's so cool. So that'd definitely be a huge part of it. I'm also currently studying my master's of music,
Yeah. Wow.
which for that I'm doing like a big kind of project, which will eventually be released under Martiln. So in 5 years' time, that will be most definitely out. I wish I could kind of say more about that at the moment, but it's still very much in the kind of conceptualizing
Mm.
phase. So the hope with that is that it will uh, propel at least the Martiln side of things in terms of the music career um, quite a bit, and very much tie in with the whole aesthetic and stuff that I'm creating at the moment. Um, and so in 5 years would be awesome to like be taking that music, and if we can, hopefully we can tour in 5 years time. um, and definitely be taking that around touring. Performing is one of the things that I really love, and one of the things I wanted to start getting back into a bit more of this year. So we'll start getting back into more of that when it's possible. um, but yeah, definitely performing, playing, and just writing music. There was a period there where I was really interested in like producing and mixing and mastering and stuff for other people, but I think at the
Mm.
moment um, it's still probably a part of what I'd be doing, but I really just enjoy making my own music, putting that out into the world, and teaching other people how to do the same. And to be honest, if I can keep doing that for the rest of my life, I'm gonna feel pretty fulfilled, I reckon.
Yeah. Right. So you keep making music, keep building up your proteges,
Mm-hmm.
and I guess master your masters, which is on the hush hush,
Yes. Yes.
but changing the world nonetheless.
Yeah.
All right, so the last one's always the toughest one. So
Mm-hmm.
if you were to give, say, a piece of advice or some kind of life lesson learned to, let's say, it's a DJ wanting to learn how to produce, or maybe it's a producer who wants to kind of up their game a little bit, or might be
Mm-hmm.
struggling, or at maybe a low point, would you have any words of wisdom to share with them?
I I had someone ask me this the other day actually, and I did kind of rack my brain a little bit. I was like, what's something I could give to people um, that is relevant to people at all stages of their career, and I came up with um, don't compare yourself to others in such a way that it gets you down, but compare yourself to others in such a way that it makes you want to strive to be better, um, and to better yourself. So I find a lot of younger producers or whatever, a lot of people will end up comparing where they're at, the tunes that they're making, or if they're a DJ, like a mix that they're doing or whatever, to people who've been doing it, who are doing it professionally and who've been doing it professionally for years and years and years.
Mm.
And oftentimes that can really get those people down. They're like, oh, I'm never going to be that good, or I'm never going to do that or whatever. But in my experience, that's entirely the wrong mindset, because they've been doing it for a lot longer than you have, and you can absolutely get to that point. You just need to make sure that seeing people do that inspires you to want to be able to get to that point, and doesn't make it feel like you're being pushed back down into the dirt, because there's always, although the music industry may seem crazy and hard and competitive, it's definitely my firm belief that there's a spot for everyone who wants to be a part of it. It's just about finding where that is for you. And if you don't try and don't push through those hard times, because there are absolutely hard times, um, you, you're never going to get there if you don't push through it. So, as hard as the times may be, just always try and push through.
And I think that's great because often when people start, they are emulating someone and they have, they idolize
100%.
people. But from what you've said, it's more about it's okay to kind of compete and have that competition, because
Mm.
competition can be healthy, but
Yeah,
consider those people colleagues, not enemies or
that's it.
kind of idols. They like
100%.
if you're a salesperson or if you work with someone in any kind of professional capacity, there's always like that inkling of like, oh,
Yeah,
I could do that, or I could do that a bit better.
yeah, 100%. Yeah,
Yeah.
but there's no malicious intent or anything. It's all like everyone's trying to help everyone else. And that's, yeah,
Yeah, I love that, and it seems like that's what you're about. You create value for the people, for the ears, for
100%.
your students. So if people want to hear some of your music and people want to kind of learn a bit more about you, where can they find you? How can they reach out to
Yeah,
you?
for sure. Yeah, you can hit me up on Instagram. I'm pretty active there. It's Martiln Music, Martiln Music, and pretty active on there. And you'll be able to see all of my recent stuff on there. And that'll link to the Beat Collective page as well. And if you want to check out Beat Collective, you can head to beatcollective.net, or follow any of the social media profiles, which is at BeatCollectAU. And yeah, that's basically where you'll be able to find me and keep up with everything that I'm doing.
Awesome. Well, yeah, we'll put some links around,
Yeah, sick.
and yeah, just really appreciate you and all
Oh,
those
thank
words of
you,
wisdom.
man. No,
Um,
absolutely. 100%. Thank you.
and yeah, until next time.
Yeah, absolutely, man.
All right, legend.
Awesome. See ya.